The Signature Series invites one speaker from each of Akron Roundtable's 4 decades to return to the Akron Roundtable podium. Dr. Austen first spoke at Akron Roundtable, which was then known as the Akron Public Affairs Forum, in November of 1977. His topic was related to heart transplantation. Dr. Austen maintains a very active life in Boston, and we felt the best way to bring you his story was with a more informal interview and question and answer format. So I will now ask Dave Lieberth, the author of Akron Roundtable's soon-to-be-published book commemorating Akron Roundtable's 40th anniversary, and a very good friend of Akron Roundtable, to moderate today's program. Dave?
Thank you, Dr. Schmidt. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I can say without fear of contradiction or exaggeration that we are in the presence today of one of the most distinguished and most celebrated cardiac thoracic surgeons in the world. From 1963 on at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, Dr. Gerald Austen contributed greatly to the development of modern heart surgery. His biography is at your table, and you can read about his education, but he has been a professor at Harvard Medical School since 1974. He was appointed then and still holds the Edward D. Churchill Professor of Surgery chair. He's had over 500 publications, and he was the founding president and CEO of MassGen's Physicians Organization, the largest multi-specialty group practice in New England. At age 86, he continues to be active in medicine. In 2010, Massachusetts General honored him with a new 150-bed facility, the W. Gerald Austen Inpatient Pavilion. This year, Castle Connolly Medical named him National Physician of the Year, a Lifetime Achievement Award. As Steve said, he was last at Roundtable on November 10th of 1977, then as president of the American Heart Association. He's been a great benefactor to Akron, to the Akron Art Museum in particular. We're happy that his wife Patty could join him today. Dr. Austen, welcome. Here's my first question. Why, when you were 17 years old, did you ever leave Akron?
Well, first, I just want to thank you, Dave, for your comments, and I thank you all for coming. Akron has always been a very, very important part of my life. Even though I left Akron at the age of 17, which is 69 years ago. And my wife and I are back here at least 4 times a year, both of us, and I'm probably here every other month. And we love Akron. I went to Western Reserve Academy, and I did very well in math and science. And my father was an engineer. I had no idea, like most 17-year-olds, what they ought to do. But it seemed to be reasonable that since my father was an engineer and math was easy for me, I ought to be an engineer. So I applied to only 2 schools. I applied to MIT and Caltech. The only 2 schools I applied to. You'd be crazy if you did that today. Of course, I didn't look at either school. In those days, it was 1947. You didn't look at schools. You looked at the pamphlets. There's kind of a cute little story about what happened why I picked MIT. About a week before I had to make the decision, my father worked at Goodyear for Paul Litchfield, who was the CEO and chairman of the board of Goodyear. Probably nobody in the room knew him. But he was a great man, did great at Goodyear, and went to MIT. He was a graduate, and he wrote one of my letters of recommendation for MIT. And I told my father that, this is about a week before I decided, I wasn't sure, but I'm thinking, I think I'll go to Caltech. The weather, all that stuff. And so my father, the next day, as he frequently did, saw Mr. Litchfield, his boss, and he told Mr. Litchfield, I think Jerry is leaning towards going to Caltech. And so Mr. Litchfield said, and I heard about it that night, that, well, if Jerry wants a Hollywood education rather than an MIT education, he ought to go to Caltech. That was a gentle reminder, it seemed to me, that my father wanted me to go to MIT, so I said, what the hell? So I went to MIT.
Well, Dr. Austen, when you say that your father was an engineer, that's like saying Meryl Streep was an actress. Dr. Carl Einstein was a celebrated engineer. When P.W. Litchfield recruited him in the 1920s, Dr. Einstein brought with him a group of engineers from Germany. They designed and built the Goodyear air duct, and in 1929, they launched the USS Akron as their first rigid airship. So, Dr. Austen, let's talk a little bit about your mom and dad. They've been mentioned before. How important were they in your education, and what values did you ascribe from them?
So, and I'm going to say this a couple times in this talk. I was very lucky to have wonderful parents. They had an enormous influence on me. They were both very intelligent, very hardworking, and I underline hardworking. My father received a PhD in engineering in 1910, at a time when almost nobody got a PhD in engineering. He, as Dave said, was recruited to Akron by Mr. Litchfield in 1924 to be vice president of engineering. He did design and build the air dock, which, by the way, at the time that it was built, was the largest building without supporting structures underneath it in the world. Because these big rigid airships were so enormous, they had to have the whole space. He built all of the rigid airships, designed and built them, that were built in the United States. He also built all the original blimps and a number of other things. But I always mention my mother also. My mother was a pistol. Those of you who know her will know what I mean. So she was very intelligent, very energetic, lived to be 102 years old in West Hill, Akron, was very involved after we left. There were 4 children after we left. She got very involved in all sorts of activities in Akron, which included the Art Museum particularly, where she was the first vice president in history that was a woman. This was in the 40s. Women were not given that opportunity. She was vice president for many years. And she was a wonderful wife, a wonderful mother, and had an enormous impression on me and on our 4 children. My parents were quite clear regarding their philosophy, which was, and I'm going to read it because it is, I think it's pretty good. Get as much education as possible. That's 1. 2, you should use the brain that you were given to the maximum. Be honorable, and your word should be your bond. Work harder than anyone else. Work harder than anyone else. I heard that dozens of times. The harder you work, the more luck you will have. Measure your success by how you are viewed by your colleagues, not by how much money you make. That was their philosophy. That became my philosophy. I think it worked pretty well.
I think we can all agree on that, Dr. Austen. There obviously came a point, you said you left Akron to go to MIT, so you made a sharp turn somewhere into the field of medicine.
Yeah, well, so I received my BS degree in mechanical engineering from MIT. I know what I'm about to say is a fact, namely that I graduated in the top 5 in my class. I I would not normally know that, but I became a trustee of MIT, and that you can find these things out there. So I did pretty well at MIT. I found it very enjoyable, but somehow I thought something was missing. I thought I would like my career to have more personal aspects to it, more interpersonal communication with people. So each summer, I worked at Goodyear Aircraft while I was at MIT. I had a really good job there. They got better every year. But between my third and fourth year of MIT, studying to be a mechanical engineer, halfway through the summer, I decided to investigate about taking pre-med courses. I went up to Case Western Reserve and asked them whether I could take biology and organic chemistry, and they said sure. But oh, by the way, the second semester of the course starts on Monday, and everybody else has taken the first semester, and you won't be able to do that. You have to take the second semester without ever having taken the first semester. Do you really want to do that? And I said yes. So I did that. I did nothing during the next 7 weeks except work. I worked like a dog. I again was, I think, lucky, because if I hadn't done well, I probably would have never gotten into medical school. The system at Case Western Reserve at that time was they had 2 quizzes for about an hour. Each of them counted 5%, and the final exam counted 90%. So in both of the first 2 tests, I had got a C. Never gotten a C before in my life. I felt lucky to get a C. And the next test, I got an A, and I got an A on the final exam in both courses. They gave me an A in both courses, which was very helpful, very lucky in terms of getting into medical school. I then applied to Harvard Medical School, finished my mechanical engineering, got accepted at Harvard Medical School at a time when nobody in engineering was going into medicine. I think that was part of the reason they accepted me, maybe. And I never did take any other pre-med courses. So I found the first year of medical school pretty tough.
Seems like you did okay, Dr. Austen. All in all. You know, I'm going to take a survey without violating any HIPAA regulations because it pertains to my next question. Anybody here except me, besides me, have open heart surgery? Anybody here would like to say thank you to the man who helped develop the cardiopulmonary bypass machine? There, thank you. We have some. Dr. Austen, how is it that you left engineering, went into medicine, started medical school, and then became one of the most renowned heart surgeons in the world?
So I would say, again, a lot of luck, and obviously some work. So open heart surgery, as we know it today, with cardiopulmonary bypass, was just at the beginning when I finished medical school, and I finished in 1955. The first successful open heart operation with cardiopulmonary bypass had been done about a year and 3 months before in Philadelphia by Jack Gibbon, who, by the way, did his original research at the MGH. He then went to Philadelphia and completed it, and he really did an amazing thing. Just think about it, operating on the inside of the heart. You can spend an hour on the inside of the heart fixing it. I mean, just unthinkable. It's kind of like going to the moon. It seemed to me that way anyways. It was a stunning accomplishment. And the MGH and a number of other well-known institutions, probably 6 or 8 of us, decided to build each our own cardiopulmonary bypass machines. Simultaneously, it was time for me to apply for internship. The only place I wanted to go to was the Mass General Hospital. I was lucky enough to be chosen as one of the 8 surgical interns. I think they had 500 people who applied. And I started on July 1st, 1955, just at the time when the MGH was beginning to start to think about building their first open heart machine. You don't mind if I turn the page, do you? So, about a month before I started, I was contacted by the staff surgeon who had been designated as the heart surgeon. I'd been working actually with him and with another man named Bob Shaw in research in my 3rd and 4th year of medical school. So I knew them. And the heart surgeon, whose name was Gordon Scannell, called me and he said, you know, you got this great background in engineering. Your specialty is fluid mechanics. That's just what we need to build an open heart machine. Would you like to help build it? And I said, of course, yes. I had no idea what I was talking about because I never even heard of Gibbon at the time. So I said yes, and then I went and read his paper, so then I knew what was going on. So Bob Shaw and I then designed the first MGH open heart machine. We built it somewhat differently to the one that was built by Gibbon, but it had the same principles. It added oxygen to the blood. It removed carbon dioxide. That's what the lung does. We added energy to the blood. That's what the heart does. And of course, we had to heparinize the patient to anticoagulate them, or otherwise any blood that touched their foreign surface would clot. We didn't have any money to do this. That's sort of the MGH way, I guess. But anyway, so we built the first bypass bay using spare parts that we would scavenger from the basement of the MGH. Bob Shaw and I both were very comfortable using a lathe, so we'd find stainless steel parts and we'd make them into what we want them to be. We went to the local hardware store and bought some stainless steel parts. We bought plastic tubes, rubber tubes, and we built this machine. It kind of looked funny, but we thought it was going to work. Of course, we had to prove that it worked. So I need to interject that in those days, surgical interns and residents worked 36 hours and then we're off 12. I did that for all of the years that I was an intern and resident. Best years of my life. We tested our machine on dogs, and we did it on my night off. So I would work 36 hours till about 6:30, 7:30 I would meet Dr. Scannell, Dr. Shaw over in the dog lab. Dr. Scannell would do a sham open heart operation. Bob Shaw and I would run the heart-lung machine, or mostly I ran it. And we measured various things to be sure that everything, you know, the oxygenation, the carbon dioxide level, the hematocrit, the blood pressure, etc. And all of the machine worked what we thought perfectly. After we'd done about 15 of these, oh, by the way, when we finished doing it, we put the dog in a cage, and when somebody took care of the dog till about 11 o'clock at night, the dog seemed to be fine. Every dog was dead in the morning. So we had 15 straight deaths. Now, that was a different time. You could not go from there to patients. But we thought we were ready. So that's a surgical personality. So anyway, so we assumed that his dogs didn't do well on cardiopulmonary bypass. I think that was wrong. I think probably what it was if we had not learned how to properly reverse the anticoagulation, I think the dogs bled to death during the night. I don't know, but I think that's probably what happened. I'll explain why in a few minutes. But we thought we were ready. In those days, you didn't have to get approval from anybody except the chief. So we went to Dr. Churchill, who was my chair of surgery at the MGH and my hero. And he said, fine, go ahead. So we went ahead. We did our first case in 1956. I ran the cardiopulmonary bypass machine. I was a second-year surgical resident. We had wonderful cardiologists. They were all for this, and we all agreed that they would not send any patient to us that they thought would live more than 30 days. So these were all desperately ill, about to die patients. In the first 10, firstly I should say the first one died. Over the first 10 that we did, 5 lived. I don't know whether that's good or bad, really. At the time I thought it was pretty good, but I have no idea. We did one case a week in that first year, and then gradually did more. Our mortality, having been 50% in the first 10, went down to 5% by the third year, and now 1%. So at least we made some improvement. One other thing about that particular period of time, we always did the open heart cases on the morning of my night off. So Dr. Scannell would go talk to whoever I was working for. Okay. So Dr. Scannell would talk to whoever I was working for and say, would you please let Dr. Austen off for the next, that morning for 4 hours, because he's going to run the heart-lung machine. They would, of course, say yes. I ran the heart-lung machine. When the patient was off the heart-lung machine, I went back to my regular job, worked the rest of the day, and then when I was done, then I was off for the next 12 hours. I would then return to the recovery room. We had no intensive care unit in those days. We just had a recovery room. I went back to the recovery room and took care of the patient with, we had a resident who was assigned to that area. We had a terrific nurse, but I was always there for every case for the first probably 2 years. And so, if you're there all the time, you actually learn a lot. So I got so that I knew more than most people because I just was there. And for one thing that both Dr. Scannell and I learned was that we really did not know how to reverse the anticoagulation. And these patients in general would bleed, and they would bleed, and they would bleed. And so Dr. Scannell and I learned that if the patient was still bleeding a lot at midnight and not slowed down, that we should go back. You just open up the incision, cauterize the areas that were oozing, and then the patients did great. We probably did that 50% of the time in that first year or so. The next thing I would mention, again, was luck. Dr. Churchill sent me to England. I was halfway through my 3rd year of residence, 4th year of residency. Yeah. He sent me to England for a year. Actually, he sent me for 6 months to London to do general and vascular surgery, and as the chief resident in King's College Hospital, which is one of the great hospitals in London. Had a great time. But while I was there, the head of cardiothoracic surgery at Leeds, which was the place in England doing more heart surgery than anybody else in England, came through the MGH, and he mentioned to Dr. Churchill they had so many patients, and if he had anybody who wanted to come, they would love it because they would like some help. So I got a letter from Dr. Churchill saying, you know, would you like to stay an extra 6 months and just go up to Leeds and do heart surgery? And I said, well, why not? So I met with the head of the program there was a fellow by the name of Gerald Austen, and I were lifelong friends. And I went up there for 6 months, had a fabulous time. By the time I came back, I'd done more heart surgery than anybody else in New England because nobody was doing it. It was a new field. There were no training programs. But it was very lucky, just luck that Jeffrey Wooler happened to come through the MGH at the right time when I was in England. I then became the super chief. The MGH and in most major medical centers in surgery, you take, at the MGH, you take 8 people, you do the 5 years, you finish, that's what you need for your boards, but then they pick one person to stay an extra year and oversee the whole program. So it was a really great job. Anyways, I was asked to do that, but the perhaps more important thing, I was asked to do it very early. Usually people who were doing that, were asked to do that, would have 5 years of general surgery, 2 years of research, 1 clinical year somewhere, maybe 8 years. So I was asked to do it after 4.5 years, so I saved some considerable time, did the super chief job, had a great time doing it, learned a lot. And then another lucky thing happened. And that is, in those days, there was a draft of doctors. And I guess it was maybe a bit into the Korean War. Anyways, when you finished medical school, you had a choice of either joining the Berry plan, in which case you could go through all of your training, and then you had to give 2 years of service to somewhere, Army, Navy, etc. Or if you didn't do that, after your internship, you got drafted. And you became a doctor, but you'd only had an internship, so you were maybe, if you were lucky, you did hernias in Texas or someplace. I had finished all my training, and I was scheduled to go in the Army. And, but while I was in Leeds, the head of heart surgery at the NIA, National Institute of Health, Glenn Morrow, came through. I got to know him. He had heard about me, I guess, in a favorable way from my bosses in Leeds. And I think we went out to dinner with a group of people, so he and I knew each other, certainly not well, but so about July 1st, 6 months before I was supposed to go, I got a call from Glenn Moore, and he said, you know, the head of our research program, the staff physician, has just accepted a chairmanship of some basic science department in a medical school, and we have this job. I know you would only want to do it for 2 years, but if you want, you can have this job, and I'll let you do heart surgery. You can run the research program, but I'll let you do heart surgery as well. So this was a time when the heart surgery at the National Institute of Health was really superb. And there were, again, very few places like that. I won't go through all the details. For me to get out of the Army was, it's easier, I think, to become President of the United States than to get out of the Army. But I did. And I got out of the Army because my boss, Dr. Churchill, knew George Berry. And he called up George Berry, and George Berry got me out. And I think the colonel in the Army who I was dealing with was so stunned that when he called me up to tell me that he just heard that I got out, he said, "I do not want to know how you did this. I never want to hear from you again." So anyway, I spent 2 years at the National Institute of Health, had a wonderful experience, learned how to write research papers, did again more heart surgery. I returned in 1963 as this young supposed heart surgeon to head up modern heart surgery at the MGH. I was an instructor in surgery at Harvard Medical School. All the Harvard hospitals are affiliated with Harvard. All of the people, professional people there, have a title at Harvard. I had the illustrious title of instructor. That gets important in that. Within 2 years of the time that I arrived, the MGH, we were doing about 75% of all the heart surgery in New England. MGH heart surgery was getting very well known and very highly regarded around the country.
Dr. Austen, for the benefit of our radio audience, I'm going to let them know that we're listening to Gerald Austen from Massachusetts General. And since you asked me to let you know where we were on time, we're rapidly approaching the appointed hour.
Okay.
So do you want to summarize maybe a little bit about your career following the rest of the surgery that you did?
Yeah, so anyway, one more important thing. So I was doing this. It was 1965, 2 years into it. If you want to get promoted at Harvard, get a great place to offer you a great job. So Johns Hopkins, which is a great place, offered me the head of cardiothoracic surgery and a full professorship. At that time, I was an instructor at Harvard. Harvard found this very disturbing. I didn't tell them that I would do it. In fact, I'm quite sure we wouldn't have done it. I just told them about it. So their counteroffer was to make me an associate professor within a month, missed the assistant professorship totally, and 1 year later they'd make me a full professor, so I became a full professor at Harvard in 3 years, which I don't think has been equaled before or since.
I'm going to take the opportunity to explain to everybody here what Dr. Austen has done as his training others. He has trained 14 surgery chairs at major academic departments, 150 division chiefs in major academic centers, 2 deans of United States medical schools, 1 university president, 2 major medical center presidents, including Toby Cosgrove of the Cleveland Clinic, and he's trained 1 United States Senate Majority Leader. How about that? Dr. Austen, let's welcome him. I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about what you see as your future.
Yeah, so okay, we have a few minutes. So again, I just want to emphasize how lucky I've been. I'm at a great institution. They're wonderful to me. I just have a wonderful time. I've taken care of thousands of patients, which I consider a great privilege. I tried very hard to have about 25% of my patients free care patients throughout my career. I cared for lots of famous patients, Henry Kissinger, Kirk Douglas, John Wayne. I had 2 interchanges with President Ronald Reagan, one at the time with his doctors at the time when he got shot, and the other about 3 weeks later when I picked up the phone and he was on the other end of the line because he was having chest pain and he wanted advice about the chest pain. I took care of TV journalist David Brinkley, and very importantly, Jack and Jim Knight, and lots of CEOs. I want to say a few words about the Knight brothers and the Knight Foundation, which is, I consider my involvement with the Knight brothers and the Knight Foundation one of my most rewarding and important career experiences. I was on the board of the foundation for 24 years and chair of the board for 14. I really got to know Jack and Jim extraordinarily well. They were absolutely wonderful people, very charitable people. Jack particularly cared greatly about Akron. Akron was Jack's home. He lived here, but he had a home also in Florida. This was his home. His funeral was in Akron. He's buried in Akron. He and I had many conversations about Akron, and I've done everything I could to see to it that the Knight Foundation did the right thing for Akron, because it seems to me that the founder's wishes should be important. I'm happy to say that one of Patty's and my sons, Christopher, was recently elected to the Knight Board, which is absolutely thrilling for us, and he's having a great time doing it. I'm now almost 87. I still work full time. I recommend it, by the way. I don't think it matters whether you get paid or not. Although I think it's better to get paid. And I mean that not just economically. I think it's better to be paid because you have a responsibility. But whatever you do, it is my belief that doing something that you think is significant and important, and that takes a fair amount of time, is important for you to do. I think it's good for your brain, and I think it's good for your morale, and I think there's a lot of that in terms of that dictates what happens to you in terms of your life. Again, I've just been so lucky in my life. I've had a wonderful personal life. I have the greatest wife around. Patty and I have been married 55 years, right? We have 4 terrific kids, all happily married, all very excellent in their behavior, all have very successful careers. 2 of them are doctors, both at Massachusetts General Hospital. Can you believe that? We've surrounded the place. And we have 10 wonderful grandchildren, which is really a lot of fun because they go home.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Dr. Gerald Austen. A number of you have set questions up, and they all sort of come down to this. Tell us what you see for the future of medicine. What do you see in today's doctors, for example, that are different from when you were going through medical school? What's medicine today look like today?
To me, my answer is going to be sort of a plus and a minus. So I think the present arrangement in medicine is not sustainable. It is crazy. What other enterprise do you send a bill out and expect to get 35% of payment? That's one. Everybody wants everything, nobody wants to pay for it. That's another, that's not a great business. It is far too cumbersome and administratively. The government has made it that way. My prediction for the future is that we will have one payer. And I think it'll be run by the government, unfortunately. It'll be a vanilla plan, and it'll be rationing. You cannot end up with healthcare costs at a reasonable level unless you ration it. And so it'll be somewhat like England. They don't do coronary bypass after the age of 80 in England. They don't do a lot of things in England that we do here. If you have a hernia in England and it isn't about to obstruct, you'll wait 5 years to have it fixed, or longer. So, like in England, we will develop a very robust private practice arrangement for the rich. We will end up with two systems in this country, just like they've had almost everywhere else, where, you know, a government-run plan and a private doctor plan for those who can afford it. I think it's unfortunate, but I think that's what will end up. The other thing I would say is, it's strange. You know, when I started, we didn't have any of the stuff we have now. And when we operated on somebody's abdomen, we had not a clue what was wrong with them most of the time, because there was no CAT scan, there was no MRI, there was nothing. Now you operate, it's almost unheard of to operate on somebody without knowing exactly what they got. We did more exploratory laparotomies when I was a resident than we did anything else, because we didn't have what we have now. So the medicine that you have available now is just so wonderful compared to what it was. And it's to me very strange that even though that has happened, in my opinion, I think the position of the doctor has diminished. And of course, the life of the doctor has diminished enormously because of all the paperwork, etc. But having said that, I did want to say that, and that is, I think to be a doctor is a wonderful thing to do. I wouldn't have changed my life in any way. Patients tell you things that they don't tell anybody else. It's an incredible privilege to be able to sit with somebody and get from them the things that are really worrying them. It doesn't happen to you very often in regular life. It's a great privilege, and finally, I would say to be able on a regular basis to help people is priceless.
One of the things that's